Welcome in to the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by Bet Online. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, and I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner, who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. Also joining us is the 2-time Emmy Award winner, Michael Worldby Freer, who is a senior writer at Stat Factor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. And tonight, we're fortunate enough to be rejoined by one of our favorite guests, in Dave Wohl, who is a former NBA player, coach, and general manager. This is episode number 143, the Lindy Waters III episode, as the former Golden State Warrior was recently traded to the Detroit Pistons as part of a multi-team deal that sent Jimmy Butler to the Bay. One quick reminder before we get joined with Dave here. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Yeah, Ross, as you said, one of our all-time favorite guests, the great Dave Wohl, former player, former coach, former GM, former you name it, 5-tool NBA player. And Dave, it's so great to have you back with us.
I've enjoyed it every time I've been here, guys, so I'm looking forward to enjoying it tonight.
Awesome stuff, Dave, and I can't wait to start picking your brain, given your experience. I want to start out with one of the hottest topics right now in the NBA, and that is the Mark Williams deal that has been rescinded, with Mark Williams being sent back to Charlotte, along with Dalton Connect and a few other players going back to LA. So my question to you is this: where do both the Lakers and Hornets go from here? Obviously, the NBA is a business before anything else, but how do you handle having players return to a roster like this?
Well, it's tough because you're basically having your team tell you, we don't value you as much as the guy we have coming in. So thanks for your service and goodbye. But then all of a sudden you're back and go, oh, we love having you back. So I think unless a guy leaves because he's a bad guy and he's caused a lot of problems, teams welcome him back. The guy's usually happy to be back with the better team, maybe. I'm sure Mark Williams was looking forward to being with the Lakers, so he may be more disappointed than anybody. But the question now is, where do they go? And they'll look at the buyout list, see if there's anybody for the Lakers in the center position that, might help them there. Or then they look at the summer. Is there a player in the summer that, might fit the center position that gives them more than Alex Len, who they signed? Kind of as we've got to get somebody in there, and he's right, like a third backup type guy. So yeah, I think I told Bruce that I thought Rob Pelinka had moved into the number one spot by far in the GM of the year race when he signed Williams too, after the 2 other signings. But it's tough now. I'm sure he's trying to figure out, was there another way I could have done this and landed Mark? How bad was it really? Why didn't I, know some more information before? Because a lot of times the trainers can talk to each other, during the year. If you had any interest in a guy, you can find out some stuff through your trainer.
Interesting.
Hey, Dave, have you ever experienced in all your years being in the league, have you ever experienced being part of a team where a situation like this happened? And then I guess if so, like, what is the atmosphere around the team and the aftermath, specifically, I guess, with the Lakers at this point, since they're the relevant team at the moment?
Yeah, it never happened to me on any teams I was on in terms as a player. I could give you maybe a parallel example. In the offseason, when I was with the Celtics, we made the Ray Allen and the KG trade. And we added some real veterans onto the roster too, the Eddie House types, PJ Browns. And it really changed the tenor of the entire roster mentality, because those trades basically said, we're going for a title this year. Prior to that, we had Al Jefferson, we had a couple young players, but I don't think the identity was a title team. So that trade, those two trades, and we had Paul Pierce, Tony Allen, Rondo was on the roster now. It basically set us up going into camp that we're a championship team. We have to acquire a championship mentality, a championship resilience, and we have to take care of business every night. So it was a totally different mindset after that trade.
Dave, you mentioned in a comment a couple of moments ago that, we kind of talked about the fact that, this Williams trade before it was rescinded was such a coup that you thought maybe Rob Pelinka had kind of, put himself in the pole position for executive of the year. But really, the Williams trade wasn't the reason that he was going to be executive of the year. It was that Luka trade for Anthony Davis. I think that was a bit more important. So even though the Williams thing fell through, do you still see Pelinka as having, put himself in position to win that award? Or do you think there's more that he needs to kind of pull out of his hat between now and March 31st, right, when the final rosters are in place for the postseason?
I thought the Williams trade was like the frosting on a cake, because even if you just got Luka, you've done a great job. He also got Finney Smith. He drafted Dalton Connect. So he's had a terrific year. And, I still think if you look around the league, there's some other guys that have probably done good jobs. But I think if you look at the start of the season, when no one was giving the Lakers much of a chance of being much more than maybe they'll get in the play-in tournament, where now you got to consider them a chance to go further than that, even if they stay healthy. I think he's done a great job. Yeah.
Now, Dave, the trade of Jimmy Butler to the Warriors was a final chapter in what had become a very toxic relationship between their star and the Miami Heat front office, specifically your good friend Pat Riley. Did you experience anything like that during your career? And what did it do, if anything, to that locker room that you were within?
Yeah, again, I didn't go through that, but with the Heat, there's a culture there. We all know that. They talk about it, they emphasize it, they live by it. Riles has been the guy that really brought it to fruition more than anything else. And yet, from what I understand, he gave Jimmy a lot of leeway within that culture. He could take a flight back different than the players. He could stay in a different hotel. He could do some things. And I think he gave him that leeway as long as Jimmy was playing the way they expected a Miami Heat to play, or really competing and everything. I think where Riley got really upset is when the injuries were piling up, or Jimmy was doing some, I'm not staying at the hotel with the team, but he wasn't playing. And they didn't have any real understanding of why are you not playing, or when he was playing, they didn't see the same type of engagement. And the only thing I think, if Pat had to think about it again, might have been he called out Jimmy in public. When Jimmy said, if I was playing, we would have beat Boston, and Pat was saying, well, you're not playing, and when you're not playing, you should just shut up. I don't know if he had done that quietly in person in his office or off to the side and said the same thing, if Jimmy might have taken it a different way. I think what Jimmy got upset with was being called out in public, because he didn't like that. It hurt his feelings. And I think, in his own words, it took away his joy on the East Coast. So yeah. I think it's a great trade for Golden State myself. I think, look, he's going to have another dog in Draymond as soon as he walks in the locker room. So he likes that. He's added toughness to the team. And if he's healthy and he's willing to engage like the Jimmy did when Miami was doing well, they get another top scorer, tough defender, tough guy that the team can play around. So I think it at least elevates Golden State, assuming he's healthy and he gives them what he used to be able to give Miami. And they satisfied the financial stuff. They gave him the 2 years, so he doesn't really lose his joy for at least another 2 years.
It's funny. I remember thinking at the time when Riles called out Butler for, talking junk during the playoffs and not playing, I thought to myself right then, Jimmy Butler is gone. This is, that to me told, because I remember doing this podcast and having this conversation with these guys. Yeah, I remember saying this, because it's like, look, Pat Riley well. You also know the Miami Heat franchise well. You were there at the very beginning when it was an expansion team. So can you shed a little bit of light on, and you kind of touched it a few minutes ago, what is where does Riles draw the line between tolerating the kind of diva behavior that Butler had a tendency to exhibit, and then reaching his red line where the relationship is permanently damaged? Now, supposedly, I read that Riles showed real emotion when he was trying to salvage thing with Jimmy at the very end and talking about the passing of both of their dads who both died. And Riles apparently got a little bit emotional, but Butler kind of dissed him and said it was like erratic behavior on Riles's part. That tells me that that's two guys that were just talking right past each other by then.
Well, I think Pat's okay, and I don't want to put words in Pat's mouth, but I think Pat's okay when the expectations are being met by the player of what he expects from the player. I think he'll bend and he'll give a guy some leeway, especially if he's your top player or something. It's when those expectations are beginning to be one-sided on the team side. We're allowing you to do X, Y, Z, but we're not getting back what we expect from you, what you kind of signed on for our culture with. And I think that's what finally, Pat's red lines might move a little, but I think that line, I think he felt he wasn't getting back from Jimmy, especially because Jimmy was asking for more money and, extensions and stuff like that. I think Pat finally, said, hey, this is where the buck stops kind of now. I've got to get more performance from you if we're going to talk about other things.
Dave, you kind of touched on what you thought the impact of Butler will be in Golden State, but I'm just curious because he played well the first two games there. Do you see him as a real difference maker on a Warriors team trying to make a playoff push, or is this just a trade to appease, say, Steph and Draymond to show, hey, we still think you guys are part of a core that can win a championship? Or is it something that's simple? The Warriors really think with this group can win a championship?
I think it's more what your second part of that question is. But it's really hard for championship teams to let go of the idea of championships because they've won so many. Golden State's won so many in the last, 6, 8 years, whatever. And I think they see Jimmy as a guy that can be a help for Steph, a help for Draymond, a help for some of the young guys. They let Clay go. Clay was like losing a piece of that championship aura. So I don't know that in reality, Jimmy can take them to a championship this year. Can he help them win a play-in tournament? Can he help them maybe get to the second round? Or maybe, if Steph's on one of these roles and, everything, the stars are all aligned, maybe that's where they get to the second round or something. But I would be really surprised if Jimmy, unless they pick up somebody in the buyout market, one or two players that, again, there's a Chris Middleton, there's Brogdon, there's some other guys, some solid veterans, that might be available. I don't know if Golden State's hit that apron where they're not allowed to pick up any guys on waivers making more than, I think, 12 million. So that could hurt. But yeah, I think it's just a good, salve for Steph and the other guys that the whole weight isn't on their shoulders every single night.
Now, Dave, my last question in regards to the topic of Jimmy Butler is the fact that his first choice and hopeful destination was Phoenix. Of course, the biggest hurdle in that request from Jimmy was the fact that Bradley Beal has a no-trade clause. And given your experience in front offices as an executive, am I correct to assume it's not just the fact that Beal himself has to waive that clause, but you also got to find a team willing to take a player with a no-trade clause? Now, I know in this given circumstance, it was Brad Beal that just squashed it right away, but how hard is it to get another team to even be willing to take on a guy that has that type of power?
Well, I think you hit on the other hard part. You may have all 29 other teams that want the guy, but the guy who has the no trade clause says, well, 27 of those teams I don't have any interest in. And the two teams that, I'm interested don't want to give you anything. So It's both sides of that equation. That's why no trade clauses are really difficult from a team standpoint. And you don't want to take a guy who after a year, you're not happy with him, but now you can't move him either. So you want a guy that wants to come to your team, might even decide to waive his no trade when he gets there or something like that. But I think Beal just said, hey, I'm going to stay here. I don't really want to move.
All right, Bruce.
So Let's talk about a team that's just been on a roll pretty much since the beginning of this season, and that's over in the Eastern Conference, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They took a big swing to improve their roster by picking up DeAndre Hunter from the Hawks, and they had to give up a couple of, guys that they really like, Georges Niang and Karis LeVert. They were respected guys in the locker room on the team. But I see this move as a direct effect of finding somebody on their team that can guard Jason Tatum one-on-one in the playoffs. And DeAndre Hunter is the kind of guy who can guard Jason Tatum one-on-one, because Tatum has learned to pick apart double teams like with ease. But if he's being guarded one-on-one by DeAndre Hunter, that won't be so easy. But so we see what the likely upside is. Any downsides to this? What's your overall take on, DeAndre Hunter going to Cleveland?
The only thing I might disagree with is I don't know that anybody can consistently guard Jason Tatum one-on-one, but I do like the deal they made, because I think Hunter can make some shots. He's a solid guy, and they give up two guys that were probably liked in the locker room. And we talked about this earlier. I think players realize this is just part of the deal I sign on for, and they can be sad about leaving. They may think they may get an opportunity to play more with the team they're going to. So unless it was two guys who were just complete assholes and bad guys leaving, yeah, the team will miss them. They'll pat him on the back. They'll wish him luck. And if the guy coming in is known as a good guy, good teammate, plays hard, can help us win, they're going to accept him in the fold and, look at him as a contributing teammate.
And Dave, kind of going back to you just being a front office executive after monitoring this trade deadline, and this is something I've always been curious about in the past, and I'm sure our listeners have thought about this as well and would appreciate it. Kind of an official answer from an expert, but what exactly does cash considerations mean in these deals that we see?
It's when I had to reach in my pocket and pay $5 for the deal not going through to the guy who said no. It's just the wording for one of the teams adding cash to the deal to make it amenable with the salary cap that's required, so that all the salaries, however many guys, match whatever the instructions are for the salary cap. So, and usually it's a very small amount. So it kind of is very vague, but that's really what it is. We're giving you X number of dollars so the deal can go through with these players, because now we match the boundaries of the salaries we're allowed.
Gotcha.
I never had to worry about that when I got traded, because my salary was so low and they just threw me in the deal,
Now, another guy that was part of the whole transaction thing at the deadline was Ben Simmons of the Nets. And he got bought out by them, and he agreed to the terms with the Clippers. Do you see him as improving the Clippers defensively even more than what they already are? Or do you see him being an impact at all the rest of the season for that team?
I think this is a good pickup for the Clippers, just we get a talented guy at a low number, okay? And we get a look at him for the remaining 40 games or whatever it is, 30-something games. But Ben Simmons is one of the strangest cases of basketball to me that I can remember, because here was a guy who was having really a terrific season with Philadelphia. He refuses to take that layup. Doc gets asked a question, hey, can you win a title with Ben Simmons? And I'm paraphrasing what the question was, but he says, I'm not sure yet. Ben loses his joy in Philadelphia. And his career has been a couple injuries and just so much less than it was before. And to me, a really competitive guy would have said, oh, yeah, you don't think I can shoot threes and shoot foul shots? And all summer, he would have been shooting threes, shooting foul shots, and come back a better player. So the question for me with the Clippers is, I think he'll help their defense because he's a multi-position defender. He likes to defend. He's good at it. The question is, you got to give him the ball on offense. So it's maybe coming off the bench when Harden's out of the game and now he gets to handle. And he's still not a shooter. He still doesn't want to shoot foul shots. He'll still avoid shooting a foul shot. So the question is, can you trust him late in the game? Can you trust him in a playoff situation? And I think that's to be determined, but the cost and the obligation is so short that, if it doesn't work out, it's just, hey, we took a look and it's just not working for us.
Hey, Dave, just a quick follow-up, because you brought up something in my head there during your answer. So let's say it works out during the rest of the regular season and he becomes an impactful guy. But now you get into the playoffs. Now what do you do with Ben Simmons? Because now it's all on the line. I mean, I understand what you say. We'll take a chance and it works. Fine. If it doesn't work, that's fine. But what if it actually does work and then you get to the playoffs? Now what does Coach Lou do?
Yeah, it's like, boy, I hope it works out, and then go, oh my God, it works out. Now what do we do is kind of like your question. And, like I said, it's going to be a case-by-case example. Like, okay, does he drive in and he's got a layup, but there's some traffic, and does he just throw the ball out? And the guy that really doesn't have a shot, he just doesn't want to get hit and have to go to the foul line. I mean, and part of that will be Ty Lue and Jeff Van Gundy trying to talk to him a lot about what they need from him. And, Ben's a smart basketball player. There's no doubt about that. The question is, does he want to resuscitate his career now with a good coaching staff, an owner, and a team that he could be a good fit on? Or is he just in his mind still the Ben Simmons that didn't take that layup and is afraid to shoot a foul shot because he might miss?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to monitor. I do know one thing, though. If he does refuse to take layups and wants to pass it out to Norman Powell, I know Norman is more than welcoming those opportunities because he likes to get those shots up. Now,
well, what could be fun, Ross, is if, let's say, the Lakers and the Clippers both get into the playoffs, and now Ben's going to cover Doncic for a while.
Right.
This could be an interesting thing because of his size and his ability. He loves to defend. So, there could be some really interesting matchups going on if he ends up, on that team playing some minutes.
Hey, but as far as the paparazzi world is concerned, though, now that Ben's back in LA, maybe he'll be able to rekindle things with Kendall Jenner and get himself back onto page 6. Any thoughts on that? You the celebrity scene out there.
I heard that was his number one reason for signing with the Clippers. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I guess we'll find out.
Nice. I'm actually looking forward to Ty Lue having the ability to use him as a small ball 5 defensively, or maybe in situations when Zubac might be in foul trouble in the playoffs. I mean, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how he manages that, if he's able to establish trust with Ben. But I really think this could take the defense potentially to a new level. And as we know, they're already a pretty strong defensive team.
Well, Ross, one quick remark, is that happened once when he was on Philly with Doc. I don't know if Embiid was hurt or something. Doc, I think, played Ben at the 5. It was unbelievable because now the opposing center had to guard him, and he just pushed the ball all the time. He was breaking the guy down, finding him for opens. He's a good enough rebounder that he might be able to handle that for certain stretches of a game. And I think Ty Lue's a terrific coach. So, you could definitely possibly see something like that. No
doubt. Now, put your GM cap back on for me, Dave, because approaching the deadline, the Phoenix Suns decided to trade a 2031 unprotected first-round pick to the Utah Jazz in exchange for 3 first-round picks that will more than likely be late first-rounders in upcoming drafts. But I found it strange they decided to make this move without really having confidence or another deal already in place. I feel like you only make one of those moves when you have a bigger trade lined up. Would you agree with that assessment? Or do you think this was them just trying to turn 1 first-round pick into 3, and it's better to have 3 rather than just 1?
Well, I don't know how many picks Phoenix still has of their own or other picks. And it could be just trying to fill the cupboard, because it's not even so much that it's a late pick, because you can still find guys late in the first round. Yep. But it's more in each of those draft picks now, I can throw it into a deal. If I want to move somebody, I can either incentivize somebody to take a longer contract, or I can throw in a pick like the Lakers, the Lakers did to get Doncic. I can throw in a pick to get somebody. So I think they may have looked at it as, look, 2031, 6 years away. We'll deal with that when we come to that. But this gives us more flexibility here to do some deals, even if we don't have anything on the board right away.
That's a really interesting angle, something that many people wouldn't even really think about. You just say, oh, you get those draft picks, who are you going to get? Well, you're right. I mean, those are like, sweeteners for potential other deals. And that's great. So a few minutes ago, we talked about DeAndre. Now I'd like to ask you about De'Aaron, as in fourth quarter Fox, now a member of the San Antonio Spurs. They have Stephon Castle there. They have Devin Vassell. They have Chris Paul. They got a lot of, guards. Is this the guy that's going to help push them into being an actual real life playoff team? They have struggled lately, but he played well, as soon as he joined the team.
I love the trade. I look at it as a later edition of Tim Duncan and Tony Parker. Pop is always liked a really quick scoring guard. He's liked a good all-around center and a Duncan. They're not the same, obviously, but I think he now knows I've got two of our long-term pieces in place. And he's got some other guys he likes. But I think for them, Fox takes the scoring load off of Wemby totally, in terms of, you got to be the guy that has a big night for us every night. Fox is really good. He's a good guy. And he's got that same kind of quickness that Tony Parker had. And I think that's just a smart move by San Antonio. Okay, now we got to just find our other parts around those two. They know the two most important guys and what they bring. Now who can complement those guys so that we have, we're 5, 6, 7 deep in a couple of years.
I really felt like Sacramento totally mishandled De'Aaron Fox this year. I mean, when they let Mike Brown go earlier in the season, one could have gotten the impression that De'Aaron Fox complained about him because that was the word at the time. And then Sacramento just kind of left him out there hanging, like they didn't come and sort of say, no, this wasn't it at all. They didn't defend him. They kind of let him really kind of twist in the wind a little bit, which I thought was pretty lame on their part. But, hey, they got Zach LaVine, who's never impacted winning on any team he's ever been on. So, don't mean to throw you a curveball there, but, Sacramento, I mean, what is going on with that crew up there?
Look, the thing you have to understand, first of all, is they have an owner who's made a lot of dumb decisions, and he's the main guy. I don't remember his last name to begin with, but
Rondive.
Yeah, that's right. And, so Mike Malone's no longer the coach there. He was the one guy that got along with everybody and doing a good job. And now Mike Brown going and Fox talking. I mean, the thing was, a couple of days later, Fox said, Mike and I didn't really have an argument. And I think Brown backed him up a little bit. So why wasn't an internal investigation where you brought them both in, if you're the GM, and say, what's going on, guys? Tell me what really happened, because the media is all over this. And then you could come out and you can tell the owner, hey, that's what happened. And I just think they rushed to judgment. I'll give you another example that's helped. Memphis had Dylan Brooks, okay? And they got fed up with Dylan Brooks. Bad guy, he's a terrible guy. They send him to Houston. Houston loves him. The crowd loves him. The fans love him. The players love him because he plays his ass off every day. And yeah, he's going after your top guy. And it's hard to find guys that do that. And I think he and Van Vliet and a couple of their other, guys, Jeff Green's on that team, a couple of guys, the veterans have really helped those young guys step forward. And Houston's become a really good team. And you can just miss on some guys because you don't really sit and investigate and get all the information, and all the 24/7 stuff is swirling around, and you respond to that instead of what actually happened.
Dylan the villain.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of villains, the New York Knicks. Well, no, I'm sorry.
Wow.
But I know, right? I have some emotional scars that are like 50 years old that still haven't healed. So you're going to have to cut me a little bit of slack here. However, Celtics Knicks, Dave, on Saturday night, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis didn't play for Boston. OG Anunoby didn't play for New York. Cat played, but he didn't really look like himself, and he kind of gutted out 9-9 in 28 minutes. I thought he actually showed courage being out there, because you could see he wasn't right. But Boston kind of seemed like their old selves. They had Luke Cornett and Nehemias Queta playing like out of their minds. And Tatum and Brunson, of course, were simply dominant. So what did we learn about both of these teams, if anything, based on what we saw in that nationally televised massacre on Saturday night?
I don't think I got anything from the game because if you've watched Boston and New York this year, they can look like championship teams and then they'll go play somebody and get beat by 25. And Boston's been on that roller coaster. And I think, Bruce, you and I have talked, are they just in this malaise waiting for 2 weeks before the playoffs in the beginning of April to start to get their playoff mindset? They're okay getting in second place behind Cleveland. If they just hold on to that, they're fine with that. And so I don't know what their mentality is. They won one, they were in a year before that, and maybe they're just assuming, we can just flip a switch and get back to championship Boston with a couple weeks left in the season. The Knicks, I think, have done a really good job. Terrific team, but it's the same thing. They don't seem to, I compare it a little bit with the KG Boston team because KG was one of these guys that would tell our guys, when we play a team that's not a good team, we got to put the metal down on them right away. We don't lose to those teams. Yeah, we'll battle the good teams. And I think Boston and New York have lost to teams, they shouldn't have probably lost to that. And they're just, whether it's mental or they just didn't have the energy or whatever, I'm not sure. But yeah, so I think both of those teams are going to be very good playoff teams. I think, they're going to get ready by the time the playoffs come. And if those two meet in the playoffs, it's going to be a great series. And I do think home court advantage may play into who wins that series.
Hey, Dave, you mentioned a few minutes ago how much you liked the Rockets. So maybe just a follow up on them. They ended a 6-game. They were in a little bit of a slump there. They ended a 6-game slide on Sunday after they really not dominated, but really played well for the first half of the season. Where are you on the Rockets this season? What are your thoughts on this team overall as a real contender in the Western Conference?
Well, I think Ime Udoka has done a great job. And he basically came in and I think he said, hey, look, we're not an expansion team. We're not a bad team. We're actually a pretty good team, and we're going to go beat teams this year. We're going to go win games. His young guys, Sengun, Green, Amin Thompson, and I'm missing one. Jabari Smith have really progressed, I think, since the season before. And they've got a nice number of veterans, Dylan Brooke, Van Vliet, Jeff Green, and a couple other guys. If they can get Cam Whitmore and Sean Tate and Eason to play more consistently off the bench night after night, this could be a really deep team that you don't want to see in the playoffs because they have the potential to play really well. They also have the potential to play kind of to their youth on occasion. So I like the arc of where they are in their development. And I think, like I said, Ime's done a terrific job. I think the general manager there has done a terrific job. So I like that team. And having been a former Rocket, I always love watching that team do pretty well.
Now, Dave, the Western Conference is full of solid teams, but outside of the Thunder, are there any teams that are contending that should feel as if they don't have a chance to get out of the West? I mean, right now it looks like Oklahoma City. It seems like everyone's picking the Thunder, but are there any other teams that come to mind?
Well, I was thinking about that, and if you looked at all the teams after them, Memphis, Denver, you can go right down kind of the list, Houston, would you bet on any of those teams in Vegas to beat the Thunder or win the West? No. So had the Lakers gotten Williams, maybe if you got to see a couple weeks with him playing. So yeah, I mean, it's almost like OKC's it's theirs to lose to get to the finals, and I like the other teams, but I think so many of those other teams are kind of, they could win or the odds would be they could just lose just as easy, like Memphis and Denver. I think the next two teams, I like Denver. I really like Denver. They won a title, but are they going to beat Memphis? Well, maybe. Is Memphis going to beat Denver? Maybe. I don't think either one of them can beat OKC in 7 games. So the West is full of good teams, but I don't know that anybody really jumps up after out of those groups that says, oh, they're right behind OKC and that they have a chance.
So, Dave, the NBA in recent years has tried different things to sort of I don't know, I guess keep the game fresh and use the court almost as a laboratory. For instance, they started the NBA Cup, now known as the Emirates NBA Cup.
Right.
They changed the format for the All-Star game this year. Instead of, the classic East versus West, it's going to be a different thing. But then Adam Silver kind of dropped one a week or two ago about maybe discussing shortening the quarters from 12 minutes to 10 minutes. Now, I can't really think of any really good reason to do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when I read that, one of the things Silver said is he was trying to encapsulate a game into a 2-hour viewing period. For some reason, he thinks 2 hours really fits TV. Now, the NBA just signed a media deal for the next 11 years at $77 billion or $76 billion. So I think all the networks and streaming people think they're doing pretty good the way they are. So the thing that would really, I think, be ridiculous with this 10-minute quarters is, you'd be taking the benches out of value. You wouldn't need that many guys on your roster, which might save some owners money. I don't know how much more money they need to save after they're each going to get about $230 million a year from the check, and you have to change all the records. And so my thought was, okay, let's have some fun with this to keep the values of the bench guys. Since I played most of my career as a bench guy, there's now 4 10-minute quarters. Okay. So the third quarter has to be played only by your bench guys. So they're going to have to play 10 minutes. You can play any ones you want, but they have to be off the bench. None of your starters can come in the third quarter. The starters can play the first, second, and the fourth. Okay, so the most your starters can play is 30 minutes. Yeah, you'll save minutes and they'll play longer, but you'll need those bench guys for that third quarter. I just don't think it's a good idea. I wasn't a big fan of the NBA Cup too, because it's so spread out. If you ask fans, half the fans can't tell you who's in it, who's out of it, who's leading. Yeah, they see who wins the final, but it's a nice paycheck for the guys. So I don't, that's great. But I just think this one, they just gave you $77 billion. Yeah. Things are going well. And I just want to make one point about that media deal too. Each team is going to get over that 77 or 76, whatever it is, about, I think, 2.5 billion over that span, each team. So they get about 2.3 or something, or 230 million a year. The team that had the worst revenue last year, not this year, but the year before, was the Pelicans. They took in 272 million. I think Golden State took in 800 million. So if you take the Pelicans 272 and you add the 230 on that they will get, let's say this year or next year when the thing starts, so they're at about 500 million. 500 million put you just behind the Lakers last year at 504 million. There's no poor NBA teams anymore. So the question is, do they need these 2 aprons? Do they need these big luxury taxes? Because everybody's got over 500 million now coming in for the next 10 years. So I don't know.
And that's before they sell a ticket.
Yeah,
before they
still
sell
have
a
all their
beer.
other revenue. New Orleans gets to keep their 272. They just get a Christmas check for the 233, and they probably have expansion of 2 teams in the next maybe 4 or 5 years. Those expansion teams are probably going to go for $5 billion. So that's another $10 billion that the 30 teams will divide up. So there's really no poor NBA teams anymore. And I just don't know how that should affect the taxes and the aprons and all the other stuff.
You mentioned expansion. I'm personally looking forward to Charlotte getting another team. That would be
Nice.
good. That's a nice expansion.
They could put in Raleigh. Yeah.
Hey, over the weekend on Super Bowl Sunday was Hubie Brown's last game as a broadcaster. It got a lot of news. There were a lot of stories told. Do you have a Hubie Brown story you can share with us?
I just knew Hubie from the coaching side. He was a terrific coach. He was an excellent announcer. I think when he started to announce, he was one of the first guys who picked the game apart for the viewer. He could talk about why a pick and roll wasn't working or why the post play was this or that. But it was more from a coaching standpoint, really nice guy. has made a big contribution. Coaching wise, he did some good things with his New York team, with Memphis, certainly. So, he's had just a wonderful career.
I have a lasting memory of Hubie that to me sums up Hubie Brown in a nutshell. It was either 2012 or 2013. I forget what year it was. I was at the NBA Finals. I was on the court before the game. Miami was playing. Shane Battier was on the Heat. Now, Shane Battier, as a young player, played for Hubie in Memphis, okay? So they went back. This was probably Shane's 10th or 11th year by the time this happened. So this was many years after he hadn't played for Hubie. So I'm standing on the court. Hubie's standing on the court doing something. And I see out of the corner of my eye, Shane Battier on a dead sprint right towards Hubie. I mean, running full speed, ran up to Hubie, not only gave him a hug, he gave him a kiss. He actually kissed Hubie on the court at the NBA Finals before the game. And, you could just see the affection and the kind of relationship Hubie must have built with players for a guy like Shane Battier to publicly come up and literally hug him and kiss him in front of the entire basketball world. I just thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, you love those moments because, it really becomes when you're on a team, if you can develop trust with a coach or a coach can develop trust with you, it makes the team so much stronger. It bonds the team more when more of those guys have that respect and feel like the coach, they matter to a coach, even if you're the 12th guy on the team or the star, because one of the things people want, and it's not even just in sports, it's in business, wherever you're working, you want to matter. You want to feel like somebody knows I'm doing something for the organization and I'm just not oblivious and punch in and punch out. And I think that's one of the things more coaches try and do now in terms of, instead of great X's and O's, I try and manage my team. I manage people so that they all feel like they're part of this.
Now, Dave, we've been bouncing around all show. It's been a joy picking your brain on all aspects of the NBA on tonight's podcast. Now, I kind of want to bring us home and go full circle here on this Luka trade. Why do this deal from Dallas' standpoint? I mean, and if you do the deal, aren't you talking to other teams if you're a GM, Dave?
I think you have to talk to other teams because if you're talking to other teams, the Lakers need Doncic. Yep. They need him. And they're probably at the least, if they feel you talking to other teams, they'll throw in another first-round teams. Rob Pelinka would get killed if he did not get Doncic because he didn't throw in a second first-round pick and probably more, okay? So that's one thing. The second thing is a guy like Cuban, who's been there forever, didn't even get talked to about the trade, didn't find out till the day it was announced. So their ownership situation, the guy that's now the governor, and I listened to some of his comments, he has no clue what's going on. And I just don't know how you trade. I think Luka's turning 26 at the end of February. AD is going to be 32 somewhere around the same time. How do you trade a guy entering his prime who's already taken you to the finals?
Yeah.
If you're mad about his conditioning can be changed. He got you to the finals in bad condition, I guess. So what if he gets all of a sudden in good condition, And the injury thing, you saw AD's probably out for a month with a abdomen or adductor strain. AD's only played about 60. So you're trading for a guy that has a big industry history. And it's easy to improve a guy's conditioning. It's not easy to find someone with Luka's basketball skills and basketball IQ. So all those things go in the why I don't make the trade, column, unless I'm getting X, Y, Z and my owner's pressuring me to do it. They worried about the money. Somebody said they were going to have to pay him $345 million on the extension. We just talked about the checks you're getting.
Yeah.
You can pay that off without even a worry. So this one boggles me. It really does.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, real quick, was it a situation where they just didn't want the front office there, the GM just didn't want to face the backlash from the fan base or whoever, media, over once, if you start calling around, the word's going to get out real quick that Luka's on the trading block, and that whole fan base that loves Luka is going to revolt almost. We're seeing some noise about that already. Is that a situation like do it under the table? Let's get it done quietly and get him out of here, and I'll deal with the aftermath? Is there something? Can it be as simple as that?
I'm sure that's what the Lakers were hoping and counting on. Yeah, I mean, the fans, if you're going to make trades based on the fans liking or not, I think you're going to be on a roller coaster all the time. I think if you wanted to make maybe the fans say, well, we got a lot back, we gave up Luka, but we got 3 first-round picks, and we got Max Christie, and we got AD, and now we can use those picks to maybe get more. That's the way you might at least placate some of the fans. But I just don't know why you don't. Miami would have loved Doncic. Why are you not in a whisper campaign with Pat Riley? I need Adebayo. I need Tyler Hero. I need a bunch of picks, and maybe somebody else. Why aren't you talking to a bunch of other teams that have some young players or good elite players that you could get 2 for 1 plus picks? It just didn't make sense. And Nico's a good guy. He's a smart guy. And I thought he's done a good job, but I just think, so how do you judge this trade? If the Lakers get into the finals or close the next 2 years and Dallas is barely in the play-in, is that how you're going to judge it's a bad trade? If, AD can't play the rest of the season, is it a bad trade? I mean, I just would rather bet on the 26-year-old guy who's one of the top 5 players in the league with all his instincts. I'll get him in better condition. He's never going to be one of those 6-pack cut guys. He's a doughy 6'8", but you can get him stronger, maybe eating better and things like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers will bring in Magic and Kareem and Worthy and Coop and some of the guys to sit and talk with him about a Laker legacy. Here's what we did. Here's why we worked so hard. You got to get in shape. You got to, put a little bit of that. We're all pulling for you, because that's what the Celtics do with each of their teams. Why Paul Pierce cried at the ring ceremony, because he got the hugs from Russell and all those guys. It was like they welcomed me into the championship, hall of the Celtics. So maybe the Lakers can do the same thing.
Now with Luka, of course, he made his debut last night at home against the Utah Jazz. Plenty of excitement in the building, the buzz. I mean, even just from the TV, you could feel it the entire game. Right. So my question with LeBron James, speaking of his legacy, do you think this accelerates his decision to retire? Or do you think he might think about sticking around maybe an extra year now that Luka's on board? Or could he look to maybe ask out because he's not the focal point now of the team? It seems like Luka is the star everyone's excited about now.
I go back with that to the Lakers when we got Magic Johnson. It was Kareem who basically handed the throne off to Magic. He just said, this is your team. It's been my team for a while. It's now your team. I'm going to still play. I'm going to bust my ass. I'm going to be a great player with us, but it's yours now. And LeBron should be able to do the same thing, because he might be able to play less minutes more productively. He may be able to play a couple more years where maybe Bronny even becomes better and he gets to be on the roster and LeBron gets to play with him. He may be able to chase another title or 2 if he wants. I mean, I'm not in his head, but this makes it easier for him to not wear out his body, to be stronger in the playoffs, play less minutes during the lead up to the playoffs. And he knows he's got another guy who's competitive as hell and can produce. So as they add to the pieces and maybe get a center, I think it gives LeBron room to turn this team over to Luka. And that looks like such a selfless thing, like passing the baton, and Kareem did it to Magic and it went so smooth. Kareem could have fought it. He could have, it was like Shaq and Kobe. I thought had Jerry West stayed with the Lakers, Jerry was the one guy I think that could have gotten to Shaq and Kobe and said, it's both your teams. Mm-hmm. You got 2 or 3 more titles in you. Quit picking on each other.
LeBron never handed those keys over to Kyrie Irving in Cleveland, and that was kind of a bone of contention there for a minute.
Yeah, I think he was, I think he was younger then. I still think he had personal things that he wanted to do and prove and be the man. I think he's older. I would hope more mature now. I think sometimes you see things as this is the right thing to do. It's not going to diminish who I am. It's not going to diminish my play, or I'm not a bad player doing this. I'm handing this over because this is our next star for the Lakers, the Laker legacy, the Laker franchise. So.
Gotcha. Well, Dave, thanks so much for joining us here on tonight's show. Obviously, exciting times in the NBA. Lots going on, lots to be had here for the rest of the season, and it's always fun getting a chance to sit down with you and getting your thoughts on everything that's going on. So, thanks
I love talking with you guys. Had a great night. Thanks.
Awesome. And with that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by Bet Online. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everyone.